For decades, there was an unwritten rule about a hillside outside Louisville. You did not want to get caught there after dark. Not by the police, but by something else. Trespassers who broke in anyway came back with the same story, retold so often it hardened into local legend. Footsteps on empty floors, a door on the 5th floor that swings shut with nobody near it, cold spots that seem to move room to room. Investigators eventually caught that door on camera. They measured the air pressure that moves it. The physics checked out. And still, when the equipment goes quiet, almost nobody wants to be the one left standing alone in that hallway. This is Waverly Hills, a 5-story tuberculosis hospital that hasn't treated a tuberculosis patient in more than 60 years, and yet has never stood empty. Beneath the building runs a tunnel, built originally to haul coal and food up the hill, later used to carry the dead back down, out of sight. Investigators who walk into that tunnel today record long, low bursts of infrasound, sound too deep to hear, produced by nothing stranger than the tunnel's own length and shape. Elsewhere in the building, bats have roosted for years, and cold drafts move through windows broken decades ago. Nothing supernatural required. Still, almost nobody goes in there alone. Every strange detail here comes with an explanation. That is exactly what makes the real story stranger. Because the strangest thing about Waverly Hills isn't what happened while it was a hospital. It's what happened when nobody was supposed to be there anymore. Most retellings treat 1961 as the year Waverly Hills went quiet. That is the part almost everyone gets wrong. The tuberculosis hospital did close that year. Hospital records confirm it. But the building did not sit empty afterward. Within about a year, new residents were already moving into the same rooms under a different name and a different mission. It reopened as Woodhaven Geriatric Center, a nursing home for elderly and severely disabled patients, and it stayed open for the next 2 decades. That single fact breaks the version of the story most people already believe. If Waverly Hills is supposedly haunted by tuberculosis patients from the 1910s and 1920s, why does Kentucky's own paperwork point somewhere else? State officials did not shut this building down because of anything from the sanatorium era. They shut it down in 1982 after documenting neglect inside a facility that by then had nothing to do with tuberculosis at all. That detail rarely survives the tour guide version of the legend. It is easier to blame something from 1926 than something from 1982. But the neglect case is not folklore, and this video won't treat it as one. It is a matter of public record, investigated and confirmed by the state, decades after the disease that built this hospital had already stopped being the reason anyone feared it. So before this story can explain the doors, the tunnel, or the 5th floor, it has to answer a harder question first. What actually happened at Waverly Hills during the years everyone assumes it was already empty? To answer that, the story has to go back further than most people expect, back before Woodhaven, back before the 5-story building existed, to why anyone built a hospital on this hill in the first place. In 1883, Major Thomas H. Hayes bought this land as a family homestead. A local schoolteacher, Lizzie Lee Harris, named the small schoolhouse on the property Waverly after the novels of Walter Scott. Neither of them had any reason to think the name would outlive the school. But Louisville had a problem. The city sits low in the Ohio Valley, where the surrounding hills trap stagnant, humid air instead of letting it circulate. That geography gave Louisville one of the worst tuberculosis rates in the country. By 1906, a city board was searching specifically for a site with elevation and airflow, somewhere the sick could breathe. This hilltop, distant and elevated above the valley floor, was chosen for exactly that reason. Construction finished in 1910, a modest 2-story wooden sanatorium built for 40 to 50 patients. Within a few years, patient numbers had climbed well past what the building was designed for, a sign of how far the disease had outpaced the plan to contain it. The response was a much larger building, 5 stories, built to hold 400 patients, designed by architects James Gaffney and D.X. Murphy, opening October 17, 1926. That hilltop had been chosen to isolate the sick from the city. Decades later, that same isolation would matter for an entirely different reason. Isolation was the whole point of this hilltop. It was also, immediately, the whole problem. A 5-story hospital built to hold 400 patients does not run on architecture alone. It runs on coal for heat, food for every meal, clean linens, medicine, and a staff large enough to keep all of that moving every single day, year-round. In 1926, none of it arrived by truck from a warehouse across town. It had to be hauled up a steep hillside that put real physical distance between the hospital and the rest of Louisville, the same distance the board had deliberately chosen for cleaner air and separation from the city below. That distance cuts both ways. Kentucky winters brought ice and mud to roads that were already a strain to climb, loaded down with coal and supplies, and a breakdown partway up the hill could stall a delivery for hours. A shortage that would be a minor inconvenience downtown could become a real problem on this hill, simply because help was never close, and the same remoteness that kept tuberculosis from spreading into Louisville's neighborhoods meant the hospital was, for practical purposes, on its own. There was no easy resupply and no quick outside assistance, the kind of help a facility inside the city could count on without a second thought. A hospital this size, in a location this deliberately remote, could not simply hope the isolation worked out. It had to be engineered around, day after day, for decades, and what the hospital built to solve that problem ended up shaping almost everything that happened here afterward. The first thing the hospital built to fight that isolation is still there, underground. Crews cut a tunnel down through the hillside, connecting the building to the base of the hill below. Its original job was almost mundane, a direct route for hauling coal and food up to the hospital without fighting the switchback road every single time. It solved, in one piece of engineering, exactly the logistics problem the terrain had created. Heavy loads moving in a straight line instead of up an exposed, weather-beaten grade. But a tunnel could only solve so much. Waverly Hills grew its own food on hospital farmland. It ran its own post office with its own zip code, a detail that sounds almost unbelievable for a single building until you remember how far it actually sat from town. Doctors and staff lived largely confined to the grounds because commuting daily down that hillside wasn't practical. Patients, confined to bed rest for months or years at a time, got radio receptacles wired between the solarium doors, along with occupational therapy like basket weaving and typing classes. Small systems built to make a remote, isolating stay bearable. None of this was dramatic. It was logistics, applied patiently year after year until a hospital on a hill without easy road access functioned almost like a self-contained town. But one piece of that engineering, the tunnel, would end up serving a second purpose nobody advertised on the original blueprints. The tunnel earned a nickname over the years, whispered on every tour: the body chute. What actually happened inside it was less dramatic than that name suggests, and worth walking through exactly. The tunnel ran from the working utility level of the hospital down through the hillside to a road at the base, the same route trucks used to haul coal and food up, since it was more direct than the exposed switchback road above ground. When a patient died, staff did not carry them through the main lobby, past the wards or down the front stairs where others would see. They carried them down that same passage instead, the same route that morning's coal delivery had used, to a hearse waiting at the road below. Whoever made that decision never had to build anything new. The coal wagons already knew. For roughly 50 years, that was the routine inside the most infamous tunnel in American ghost lore. but a walk down a working passage repeated as often as it needed to be by staff who had made that same walk that morning, carrying something else entirely. 50 years of that routine ended for a specific, documented reason. In 1943, researchers discovered streptomycin, the first antibiotic effective against tuberculosis. Patients who once needed years of bed rest and isolated mountain air could now be treated in weeks and sent home. Sanatoriums across the country lost their purpose almost overnight, and Waverly Hills was no exception. It closed as a tuberculosis hospital in 1961 after roughly 50 years of continuous operation. But the building itself did not go quiet. It changed jobs, becoming Woodhaven Geriatric Center within about a year, until Kentucky shut it down in 1982 over documented neglect. That closure did not end the building's story either. It started a pattern. In 1983, a new owner planned to convert the property into a prison. The surrounding town blocked it. In 1996, another owner announced plans for a 150-foot statue of Jesus on the roof, along with a chapel, theater, and gift shop, a project that collected roughly $3,000 in donations before it was canceled the following year. In 2001, Charlie and Tina Mattingly bought the site and began the first real restoration it had seen in decades. In 2014, local government approved rezoning for a hotel and convention center with plans to turn patient rooms into guest rooms. That conversion has still not happened.
What survives physically is the 1926 building itself and the tunnel beneath it, largely as they were the day the last residents left, wading through one abandoned plan after another for a purpose that would finally stick. One purpose did finally stick. It wasn't the prison, the monument, or the hotel. Today, Waverly Hills runs a regular tour season, March through August, plus paranormal investigations lasting up to 8 hours. This year, the building added something new, a ticketed escape room built into the sanatorium itself, using its own history as the premise. People now pay money to be deliberately locked inside a building their grandparents' generation crossed the street to avoid after dark. That is the actual answer to the question this video opened with. For decades, the rule on this hillside was simple: don't get caught here after dark. Now it is the opposite. Getting inside after dark, on purpose, with a guide and a ticket, is the entire product now. The fifth-floor door that investigators filmed swinging on its own is still there, still explainable by ordinary air pressure, and still one of the most requested stops on the tour. The tunnel that once moved coal, then food, then eventually the dead, is now walked by visitors who pay for the chance to stand inside it. Nothing about the building's physical mysteries has changed. What changed is who gets to decide what Waverly Hills means. A family, a historical society, and a paying public, working that out one season at a time in the same rooms where a very different argument over air and altitude and a disease nobody could yet cure started all of this more than a century ago. The building was never really abandoned. It just kept waiting for someone to decide what it was for.